A brutal display of power tennis from Jelena Ostapenko. She was well down in that second set, but she roared back.
They told her clay wasn't her surface. They put her in a box, slapped a label on it, and moved on. But something happened tonight in Lind that nobody in the tennis world is talking about the way they should be. A 20-year-old from the Philippines stepped onto red dirt, faced a former Grand Slam champion, battled for nearly 2 hours, and walked off the court having lost by a margin so small it almost doesn't exist. Almost. Before you scroll past the scoreline and file this under another loss, stop. Because the scoreline is the most dishonest thing about what happened tonight. If you only looked at the result, you missed the entire story. And the entire story is the one that actually matters. Here is the number that should be living rent-free in your head right now. 74 points to 68. That is the total points won across the entire match between Jelena Ostapenko, a 4th seed, a French Open champion, a player who has made clay her personal kingdom for over a decade, and Alex Eala, a 20-year-old in just her second competitive clay match of the whole season. 6 points. The entire difference between those two players on that court tonight was 6 individual points. Not 6 games. Not 6 sets. 6 moments where the ball landed on one side of a line instead of the other. Let that breathe for a second. A former Grand Slam champion on her best surface, with hundreds more matches of experience, with a forehand that has dismantled world-class players for years, could only separate herself from a young woman who has spent most of 2026 on hard courts across 4 different continents by 6 points. That is not a dominant victory. That is a survivor's escape. Now let's get into the numbers that the post-match coverage is completely ignoring, because this is where the Real conversation begins. First serve percentage. Eala landed 88% of her first serves during that match. 88% on clay, in her second match on the surface this season. That is not a decent number. That is an elite number by any standard on any surface in professional tennis. And here is the part that makes your jaw drop. Ostapenko, the French Open champion, the woman who has been playing on clay her entire career, put in 83% of her first serves. Eala was more accurate on first serve than the Grand Slam champion. On clay. In her second clay match of the year. And when you look at what happened once those first serves landed, the picture becomes even more striking. Eala won 52% of her first serve points. Ostapenko won 54%. 2 percentage points. On first serve, these two players were practically the same. There was no gap. There was no domination. It was two athletes matching each other shot for shot, rally for rally, with neither one pulling away. This was not a young player getting schooled by a veteran. This was a competitive, tactical, grinding battle between two players performing at nearly identical levels on serve. So where did everything fall apart? Second serve. And this is the part of the story that everyone needs to understand, not to criticize, but to learn from. When Eala missed her first serve and had to rely on her second, Ostapenko won 100% of those points. Every single one. 0% conversion for Eala on second serve points. On clay, a second serve sits up higher. The ball kicks, it bounces above the shoulder, and a returner with a weapon like Ostapenko's forehand turns that into an execution. She was stepping into those deliveries and unloading with a level of aggression that left no time to recover, no space to construct anything, no window to breathe. That 0% number is painful to read. But it is also the clearest possible roadmap to what needs to change. Here's the thing though. That is not a character flaw. That is not a mentality problem. That is a spin rate and placement adjustment that can be built on a practice court. And where is Eala heading next? The Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca. The facility built around the man who mastered clay more completely than any human being in the history of the sport. The coaches there have spent decades engineering serves that neutralize power returners on heavy clay. This is not a crisis. This is a lesson landing at exactly the right moment with exactly the right resources available to solve it. Now let's talk about the breakpoint battle because this is where the chess match inside the tennis match was happening. Ostapenko earned 9 chances to break Eala's serve. She converted 6 of them. 67%. That is a clinical, champion-level conversion rate. She knows exactly how to raise her aggression by precisely the right amount when a breakpoint arrives. That muscle memory is built through years of competing on the surface where she built her legacy. But here is what people are skipping over. Eala also earned 9 breakpoint opportunities. She converted 4. 44%. 2 more converted breakpoints and we are talking about a completely different match. 2 moments where the forehand clipped the tape instead of clearing it, 2 rallies that ended 1 shot too early. 2 points standing between where we are now and a conversation about one of the most stunning upsets of the clay season. The game's 1 column shows 13-9 in Ostapenko's favor. For games. But look at how that gap was built. Ostapenko strung together 6 consecutive games at 1 point in the match. 6 in a row. That is a run of absolute destruction. When her forehand gets locked in and starts finding corners, she does not win points gradually. She wins in avalanches. She buries opponents under a wave of winners that comes so fast and so heavy that by the time you process what happened, the scoreboard looks completely different. She found that gear, she used it, and she built a lead that would have crushed most players at any level. But here is what actually happened next. Eala responded with 4 consecutive games of her own. After absorbing that 6-game avalanche, after getting buried under Ostapenko's best tennis, she regrouped, refocused, and clawed right back. The second set went deep enough that Ostapenko was serving at 5-5 at one point, gripping her racket tighter with every game, fully aware that the player on the other side of the net was not going to disappear quietly. That is not the behavior of someone who does not belong on this surface. That is the behavior of a competitor who refuses to accept a narrative written by other people. And then there is the double fault story, which is one of the most revealing pieces of the entire match. Ostapenko committed 11 double faults. 11. At a WTA 500 event, as a 4th seed, on her best surface. That number tells you everything about the pressure Eala was generating. A veteran champion with a Grand Slam title was feeling enough tension in this match that her arm tightened, her toss drifted, and she gifted 11 free points across the match. Eala committed 5. Less than half. She was the more composed, more controlled, more disciplined server in this match. And she still found a way to lose because discipline without a lethal second serve on clay is a shield without a sword. You can defend all you want, but eventually the attack finds the gap. On the return side, the numbers are almost identical. Ostapenko won 35 return points. Eala won 34. 1 point. On return, they were equal. Eala was reading Ostapenko's serve just as well as Ostapenko was reading hers. The entire match, the complete gap between winning and losing, came down to the service side. Eala won 34 service points. Ostapenko won 39. 5 points on serve. Almost entirely explained by that one statistic, that 1-0, sitting there on the second serve line. This is exactly why this performance should not be mourned. This is exactly why it should be studied, respected, and used as fuel. Because what Alexandra Eala showed on that court tonight was that she belongs in these moments. She matched a French Open champion on first serve accuracy. She matched her on returns. She converted 4 of 9 break points against a player who owns a Grand Slam trophy on this surface. She came back from a 6-game run that would have mentally finished most players. She pushed the second set to within touching distance of forcing a real conclusion. And she did all of this in her second clay match of a season that started on completely different surfaces on the other side of the world. Think about what the clay record looked like before this season. Coming into 2026, the career clay record was 14 wins and 21 losses. Heading into Lind, she had already added a straight sets win over Grabber. Now she has taken a set from a Grand Slam champion and come within 6 total points of winning the match. The record now reads 15 and 22. But the gap between those numbers and what the performance actually looked like is enormous. The curve is moving in one direction. The trajectory is clear. This is not someone enduring clay as a surface to survive. This is someone actively learning how to conquer it. Stuttgart is next. Then Madrid. Then Paris. 3 more opportunities on red dirt, each one bigger than the last, each one a chance to take what was learned in Lind and turn it into something the rest of the draw cannot prepare for. Because when the second serve becomes a weapon instead of a vulnerability, when that 0% becomes 40, 50, 60%, the player who nearly beat Ostapenko tonight becomes someone that every clay court specialist on tour has to genuinely fear. The head-to-head between these two players now sits at 2 wins for Eala and 1 for Ostapenko. Both of Eala's victories came on other surfaces. Ostapenko holds the clay chapter of this rivalry right now. But rivalries are living things. They grow, they shift, they flip. And the next time these two meet on red dirt, Ostapenko will walk onto the court knowing that the player across the net spent the weeks between now and then at the academy where the greatest clay player who ever lived built his game from the ground up, working every single day on the one thing that separated them tonight. What happened in Lind was not the end of anything. It was the first real chapter of something that is going to develop over the next several months into one of the most compelling clay court stories of the season. A 20-year-old player with 68 points won against a Grand Slam champion on her home surface, with one fixable weakness standing between a loss and a result that would have shaken the entire women's draw. 6 points. One weakness. One academy. One player who absorbs lessons the way clay absorbs rain, quietly and completely, and comes back harder than before. They said she cannot win on clay. She beat Grabber in straight sets. They said she cannot compete with Grand Slam champions on clay. She stood across the net from 1 for an hour and 42 minutes and made her fight for every single game. The wall they built around this narrative is cracking. Stuttgart is coming. And nobody should be sleeping on what walks through that gate.